Hi, and welcome back to another episode of ZoTalks. This is the show where we talk about all things mental health. We focus on adolescents, the mental health industry, and the education industry. This is a show where we talk about all things difficult. What are some of the burning questions on your mind that you want to talk about?
I'm Christina. I'm from Zoala. We're a generative AI tech startup company.
And I'm Joanna. I'm from wwyd, a youth counseling center. And today we thought to mix things up a little bit. We're going to be going through some of the questions that we've seen you guys post for us and helping answer them.
Yeah, some of you guys have reached out to us on social media, so thank you for the LinkedIn messages and messages on our Instagram. So we thought it'd be really nice to address some of these questions. Some of them are really good, some of them are really difficult. So thank you for sharing those with us.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I saw, and it came up with our interview with Jasmine, was the difference between a counselor or a therapist. And sometimes people also throw in a psychologist in that mix too.
And a psychiatrist.
And a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist is a bit easier. Okay. So psychiatrists, they need to study medicine first. And they are qualified to prescribe medication. Right. So usually people with like very intense symptoms of anxiety or depression, they might see a psychiatrist so that they can get the medication to reduce some of the physiological symptoms that they're facing.
Or like other mental health illnesses like schizophrenia?
Yeah, so they could see a psychiatrist if they're looking for someone who can also provide medication. Now, between a counselor and a therapist, a lot of practitioners will use the terms interchangeably. And what Jasmine mentioned was that therapist is more long-term and counseling is generally short-term. And to some extent, I do agree with her because counseling, it's more about tackling the day-to-day kind of stressors that you experience during life transitions or even a grieving process. But the thing is, a therapist can do that as well. But usually for a therapy, we do see it for more long-term challenges like personality disorders. And it wouldn't necessarily be wrong to say that a therapist is someone that you see for more long-term, deep-rooted issues. But that's, again, not to say that a counselor cannot do those things as well.
Because someone could see a counselor long-term too, right?
Yeah, long-term and for deep-rooted issues as well.
Right, okay. So I'm seeing it is quite interchangeable.
Yes. But of course, again, different practitioners will have their own opinions, but in general, just know that regardless of who you see, the title doesn't necessarily matter so long as the person you are seeing is, has good rapport with you, has
you feel comfortable with them.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, and then with a psychologist, what's the difference again? Psychologist, counselor, therapist. Usually for a psychologist, they're trained when they receive their education in doing assessments. So they can actually provide diagnostics. So they can actually diagnose you with personality disorders or with certain mental health conditions like OCD and things like that. So I would say that's one of the bigger differences between a psychologist and a counselor or a therapist, is that they have training in the assessment tools in the diagnostics area.
So on that topic of a psychologist versus a psychiatrist, can a psychologist also diagnose someone with bipolar or schizophrenia? Right. Yeah. So at what point do they then need to see a psychiatrist? When the medication comes into play, right?
So technically a psychiatrist can also diagnose you. And it's not to say like, if I get a master's in psychology, I'm a psychologist, right? If I get a master's in family therapy, I'm a therapist. If I get a master's in family therapy, I can also call myself a psychologist or like I can, So because the truth is, especially in Singapore, there's no regulation for these terms. So for example, my master's in counseling, when I graduate, if I do a graduate diploma in psychodynamic psychotherapy, I could also call myself a psychotherapist, even though my master's is from counseling. So it's not to say that what you studied, that term carries over to the title you give yourself as a practitioner.
Right.
It's a bit confusing.
So that could get quite confusing.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people, like let's say I do a master's in counseling and I do a grad dip in hypnotherapy. I can go outside and
so
call myself, I'm a hypnotherapist. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but I would say in that situation you could, especially if, even though you've had a grad dip, if you've had like, you know, years of experience in that field, I would safely refer to that person as a hypnotherapist.
So it's
and I trust them to be a hypnotherapist too. I mean, if they've, especially given the experience.
Yes. It's really about what the professional, you know, feels that is an appropriate title given their experience, given their education, and what kind of area do they want to divert to, what specializations they want to focus on. So that's why, again, to me, the most important thing is the relationship you have with your practitioner. Is it a good fit? Can they really help you address the problems that you're facing, regardless if they're called a therapist or a counselor, a psychologist, so forth. And
okay. So you might not have the answer to this question, but do you know why it's not regulated in Singapore? Do you know if they're looking to regulate this?
They're definitely looking to regulate it. So you have organizations like the Singapore Association of Counselling, and for example, one of the criteria to be under this membership is to clock 600 hours, I think, in 3 or 2 years. And it sounds like a lot. And why it is a lot is because they want to uphold a certain standard.
For sure.
Yeah. I think it's in Singapore, maybe it's because we're quite young. I don't know how to phrase it. Yeah, we're quite we don't have as long of a history as the United States, right? And when all these came up, or European countries. And so that's why with Singapore, they are definitely trying, and they're definitely making a lot of good efforts to get to that standard where, you know, it's more regulated and it's more clear about the terminology and all of that. But it's a work in progress. And I think that's why right now there's still a little bit of uncertainty about, you know, do I call myself this? Can I call myself this? Because by right, I could get a degree in like computer science, and then I could get a grad dip in counseling, and I can go out and I can label myself as a counselor.
Right.
Yeah. So do your research. Make sure that the person you're seeing is someone that you're comfortable with in terms of their experience and their criterias and their expertise.
And maybe someone that has the SAC accreditation.
So that's one of the things we definitely see. People gauge towards those therapists or counselors or whoever with that accreditation. Yeah, because that reflects that you really clocked in the amount of hours you have that experience.
Or if your therapist or practitioner doesn't have it, it's a good check to see if they're on their way towards that too. Okay, nice. That's a good start. All right, on to some other questions. So one question came up. I don't know if you know which episode this is from, but it was a question about confidentiality. So I suppose there's a few things that we can explore for this question. It's the difference between a school counsellor and a private counsellor, because we those two roles come up often, because I mean I work with schools and work closely with school counsellors, and of course we have you from the mental health industry side of things, so there is that difference that we want to explore. But to tackle this question from this viewer, thank you for the question, confidentiality. So this example that they provided is if they have if they're engaging in self-harm or know someone that is self-harming,
do they have to tell the parents? Is it?
Yeah. Would the practitioner then have to bring in all the, you know, and like, you know, ring all the bells and whistles and bring in everybody to
It's a very it's a legit concern, because I actually know people from my personal life who really do want to seek help, but they are just so afraid because they know they have to get parents' signature, or because maybe they're a minor, that it's a case of self-harm and their parents or their caretakers are going to find out, and they just don't want to go through that. It's a lot.
Right, they want to seek help, but they don't want to yet involve their parents.
Yeah, or they want to try to, you know, resolve it because maybe their parents don't understand, or maybe they don't want to worry their parents.
Or maybe it stems from the parents.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons why, and they're all very understandable reasons not to want to seek help because they don't want to involve their parents or caretakers. So, but this is actually, I'm glad this was brought up because I don't want the conception to be that when you give your counselor, when you disclose to your counselor that, you are engaging in self-harm, it's suddenly like they press a red button and then it's like everyone's going to know and like so many things are going to happen and it's going to be so fast and the situation is going to get worse. It's not like that. Counselors are advocates for their clients. So first and foremost, they should be putting their clients' well-being in the present mind, regardless of what decision they do.
So that means if you're someone that is feeling this and you have those worries, your practitioner would put you first and your
concerns first. So there's limitations, especially when it comes to self-harm. Okay, so if we go back a little bit, self-harm, is it with suicidal intent or non-suicidal intent? Because according to the Code of Ethics for the Singapore Association for Counselling, SAC, any indication of immediate harm to yourself or someone you know should be reported to the relevant authorities. And with suicidal intent, it's more or less a clear-cut case where you have to inform a caretaker or, IMH, if they can get you the resource that you need. But with self-harm that doesn't involve suicide intent, this is called non-suicidal self-injury, NSSI. This one is a little bit more gray because a lot of people engage in NSSI because it's a way to cope. It's like talking to a friend or distracting yourself. That feeling of self-harming helps people, maybe they gain a sense of control, over their negative emotions, or it's relieving because it distracts from the pain of something else. But they have no intent to die.
Right.
Yeah, there's no intent for suicide. So in those instances, it's more gray. So the therapist is the one making a clinical judgment whether or not they should report it. And let's say if they do, going back to confidentiality, they're not going to just be like, okay, I'm sorry, I have to tell our parents, and that's it, and you have no voice. So they're going to try to advocate for you as much as they can, meaning you're going to be involved in the process as much as they can have you be involved. So, for example, if they need to inform a parent, they will involve you in a discussion about how do you want to tell your parents? Do you want the counselor to tell the parents with you in the room, or would you prefer to not be in the room when it happens? Or do you want to, with the therapist or the counselor, write a letter with them giving advice on how you can phrase it and presenting that letter to the parents with or without your counselor in the room? So there's different ways that they will help you. It's not like you admit you self-harm or you might have suicidal thoughts and they kind of just take it and run.
Right, yeah. They actually, which is also good because a practitioner kind of works through things, and this is one other thing that they help work through with their clients.
Yeah.
Right.
And another thing is the way they tell parents as well or caregivers. It's not like so-and-so said that they're going to kill themselves, right? It's not that crass. They might, because there's still that element of confidentiality where they're going to try to keep as many things private as they ethically are allowed to. So they might not disclose, the exact wording of what the minor said about, the thoughts that they've been having. They might just say, based on my conversations with your son or your daughter, I am a bit concerned that there might be some challenges about having thoughts of self-harm or having thoughts of suicide. And I just wanted to inform you so that together we can collaboratively think about how we're going to approach this issue and in a comfortable and a safe and a respectful manner.
Yes, right. And it's helping get the parents and the caretakers on the same side to work together to support this student or this child or this youth.
Yeah. So for our viewers who feel like they do want to get help, but they're just worried about, everything's just going to be taken out of context, or like they're not going to have a voice anymore once they, kind of disclose some of their inner thoughts. It doesn't have to be like that. The counselor should be the one that's still advocating for you, still helping you go through the whole situation at a pace that's comfortable for you.
Okay, so what about for some of our adult viewers, or our school viewers, or if any school counselors that are viewing this, do you have any suggestions on how best they can help support their student or their child?
If you are a parent and your child or a close family friend talks about having these difficult thoughts of self-harm or suicidal intent, definitely don't feel bad that you can't help them, right? Because I actually see a lot of family members and partners of people who are going through a very tough time with their mental health, and they feel so terrible because they feel like they're not good enough, that they can't help their significant other or their parent or their child or their friend through this problem. Firstly, I would say that that's not your role, right? Your role is to be a supportive friend or family figure,
and also for the parent as well, that it's not, you didn't screw up. It's not your fault. They're going through something, and it's where they can seek help is to help how best to then move forward and help their child.
Exactly. So it's about how can you help the person receive the proper or appropriate help from a trained professional, right? Definitely be there, listening ear, trying to provide words of encouragement, things like that. But at the end of the day, don't feel bad if you can't change them, because firstly, change has to come from within themselves. And it would be best to find someone who is trained with the resources and the knowledge to understand how to carry out that change, with you as a supportive figure in the background.
Yeah.
So
I think supportive figure is very important to focus on. Yeah, because I can understand in that moment a parent might lash out because of their own, obviously love and concern for their child, but that's probably the last thing that that youth needs. I suppose the parents' own worries and concerns being put on them, but it's about getting that support.
So even if your reaction to someone that's going through a lot of mental health issues is like aggressive,
like, why are you so stupid? How could you think of hurting yourself?
It's very hard, because at the end of the day, it's not at the end of the day, everyone has their own issues they're working through, and they have their own way of coping with them, and some of it might be healthy, some of it might not be very healthy. But I wouldn't say it's anyone's fault, right? How they react and respond and process all these hard stressors going on in their life. So for the parent who has, young kids or someone that's going through mental health issues, try to hear them out, like adopt an open mind and try to understand what are they facing that's making things so difficult for them, and try to listen empathetically and without inserting your own thoughts and judgments into the scenario, right? If a child says that, school is so hard, one of your thoughts might be like, when I was your age, right? So it's fine to think that way, because you have your own experience and it's completely valid, but your experience is not the same as another person's, especially for your child. Especially, it's like the world has changed so much in the past 30 years. So the kind of experience that they're facing in school or with their work or with their friends, it's not going to be completely the same, right?
Yeah, so saying those things might be true to the parent themselves, but it adds no benefit to the child.
Yeah, so definitely listen and try to see, like, the act of just listening so the other person can release some of that frustration or tension is already quite good in some scenarios, for them to feel better. And then another step would be asking them, what would you like to do now? Are you comfortable with, because as much as I want to help you, I don't think I can I help you find someone who can give you that help that you might need. So that would be a good next step. So one, try to validate, say that, these things definitely sound tough. I might not totally understand what you're going through, but I do see that it's very hard for you right now. And then, yeah. No, sorry. And then the second step of just trying to get them that help that they need.
I was going to say, for any parents that might be viewing this that hasn't seen our other parent podcast episodes, it might be useful to watch them. The one
with Priscilla
Jessie
and
Jessie
and
and
Jasmine. For the
Jasmine.
parent perspective. Yes,
because I liked how they shared from a parent's point of view and how they found that their child benefited from seeking private counselling. And that they also developed those skills, and they had someone else to talk to about. And it was that additional perspective, because as a parent they are biased towards their own child, but also they're deep in within those emotions or within that situation. So having that additional perspective was really useful for the child, and then that child also had another person that they could go to, not just their parents, not just their mothers, but they had additional support. So
and then we had an episode where we interviewed Priscilla. Priscilla's a parent coach. So for any of you guys, if you are parents and you're trying to find ways to help bring up a more nurturing home environment, you can also check out that episode, because she talks about parenting styles and the effects that can have on a child's mental health or development when they grow up.
And if I may share something personal, back when I was in high school, I remember also engaging in similar activities. And so I was struggling, but actually a teacher, one of my teachers, I'm gonna call out, thank you, Miss Welsh, she noticed that my teacher, so I suppose also going back to when we talk to schools, it's not just on the school counselor, it's also on the educators, because you guys see your students every day. You guys have the most contact with your students, and it's a lot of responsibility, but it really does fall on you as well. But my amazing teacher, my music teacher, she noticed, and she did help, seek help for me. So the steps she did involve, she let my mom know, and so they were made aware. And I'm trying to remember as a teenager my thoughts and emotions. But she also then had to connect me to the school counselor. Not a great experience.
Which is something I hear more often than I would like.
Yeah, but though, credit to some of the school counselors that I've met in Singapore so far.
They're very passionate about it.
Yeah, they're passionate. Yeah. They're so welcoming as well. Like KG. Some of the school counselors we've met, I would not mind speaking to them as a teenager. And actually, I've heard some really good responses too, that, they have an open door policy. They do have those students that would be willing to reach out to them. But obviously, it's those students that don't have the confidence or don't even realize what's going on for them to kind of reach out. So I suppose that's where Zoala comes in. But going back to that, so for the educators to kind of, that really helped me a lot. My teacher noticed, and she helped me through it with pulling in other resources and help. So I suppose from a school setting, it's a little bit different from a private counsellor, because there are those protocols and certain things that they processes that they need to adhere to.
Yeah, I mean, but regardless of the guidelines or the regulations, it's very nice for your music teacher to have reached out to you like that. Yeah, but and this can be another discussion that we can have about, you know, school counselors and private counselors and, you know, what's the difference. So if you guys like that or want to hear about it, you can, you know, comment below, let us know. But yeah.
I think we can end on a happier note.
Okay.
One of the questions we got was about, and I love this one.
Oh,
Yeah. What is the Durian? Why in
Durian.
our background or on our tables we have Durian? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is kind of like our unofficial Zoala fruit mascot in a way. Obviously, we have our Zo face, our AI bots, but yeah, so actually this is a good segue into where, you know, we'll be at EDUtech this year, and actually thankfully at our Zoala booth we've also invited Weed to come along. So Joe will be there, Xing Shen will be there as well, the counselors at Weed, and yeah, we're inviting them to kind of talk to the schools and other counselors that might be interested in how that works, and how at Zoala it's all about that continuum of care and how we connect other resources to provide additional support for schools. But going to our Durian, I think this all started at last year's EDUtech, which is why I'm bringing up EDUtech in the first place. And for the tech show that was presented by Jeff, our CEO, we used Durian as the analogy. And so it's about you know, as students, or anyone for that matter, you know, we all have a hard, thorny, really hard to crack outside. But yeah, who knows what's waiting on the inside, you know, but also the fact that every Durian inside is different.
Yeah.
And that's the same for everyone. Like, you know, don't judge a book by its cover, but it's also being able to spend that time to crack into your student or your child, understanding, you know, what is really inside, what shines, you know, and once you can get past the tough outer shell
Or the smell.
yes. Not saying that our students smell, but yeah.
No.
Yeah, and so yeah, so it's our unofficial mascot, and so yeah, so naturally you'll see Durians
See a
lying
lot. Actually, you guys can't see, but we have like a pile of Durians over there, and they're going to be available for people who attend our EDUtech booth on
so the booth is at L19, I believe.
L19 on 8th and 9th
Yes, 8th
November.
and 9th of November. Yeah, and so yeah, Joe will be there too.
Yes.
We're gonna have a joint workshop. It's almost gonna be like a podcast but live. Yeah, so we've come together to provide workshops. There'll be other workshops around our product and how it works. But for us, it's also what we do here. It's bringing the tech and the mental health together, and how that works, and how we best support our schools.
Yeah, and for me and Christina's conversation, a little bit of what we talked about just now, I'm going to be discussing how you can navigate suicide conversations with compassion and clarity, because it's a big misconception that if you talk about suicide or you talk about suicidal intent, it's going to escalate the risk of someone committing of someone you know, following through with their suicidal thoughts, which is actually not true. Actually, research shows the opposite. So if you're interested in finding out more, join us at EDUtech at Sands Expo.
Yeah, Marina Bay Sands.
Marina Bay Sands.
Yes, the expo hall. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let us know if you have other questions, these burning, difficult questions that you'd like us to explore, and obviously if it's applicable, we'll be bringing in other, you know, guest speakers to also address those. Yeah. Okay. See you guys next time, and hopefully see you guys at EDUtech. See you guys. Bye.